What's going on, y'all? This is Cheeston and Christ Cannon here, the internet's biggest music nerd, and today we're going to be reviewing Pessimist, the debut studio album from underground hip-hop artist, rapper, lyrical genius, Anskee. This is, of course, his first full studio album, far from his first release, of course, notable for big hits such as Vinsmoke, New World, and Thinking in the Dark, among others. And now, with the release of Pessimist, his discography has since doubled. And there's a lot of interesting takeaways to take from this record, mainly being the display of pure promise and potential that comes from this record, as well as just a big, massive improvement in comparison to previous releases we've seen. However, there are obviously still some glaring issues, such as plenty of room to grow as a mixing engineer, which we will go over quite a bit, as the vocal mixes do fall quite flat sometimes and could really use a bit more spice and flair. And at times they do feel a bit disjointed from the beat itself. It just feels like sometimes homie is just on YouTube looking up beats. He's like, Juice WRLD type beat. He's like, I like this one. And then it's just like going like Eminem, like Rap God style, which just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But let's get straight into it. As kicking things off, we do have the title track, the opening track, Pessimistic, still waiting on the music video. I do still think it was an interesting choice releasing Show Up and Pokerider as the releases rather than having the title track be a single. Nonetheless, it's still here, and it's the first of many guitar beats on the project, and the first verse just goes in straight away with the energy of the track, which is pretty good, actually. There's a lot of emotion sprinkled throughout the lines, which was one of Anskee's big criticisms early on. It was just very flat and monotone, but in this record you see lots and lots of powerful performances, which is really good. I do think the first verse is interesting, having it just kind of be like, oh, I am grieving over the loss of Juice WRLD and X, and I'm writing dead men letters, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting take at it. There's a solid hook. It's a good melody compared to the verses, which are just kind of spit, more spitting. And I mean, one of his strong suits is his pen, and we see a prime example of that here with the title track. And I do actually really solidly like the hook. You know, I think it's delivered nicely, and it's a nice breakup from the verses. We also have two skits on this project, which are just kind of acting as interludes. I do think they could have benefited from just like maybe a bit of like background ambience, like maybe some like bird noises or some like chords or something along those lines, rather than just like pulling up voice memo and then recording. But nonetheless, it's really deep shit. That's all I can really say about it. And then we get into our first single that we saw for the project, Show Up, featuring Delta D's and Silas Legend, whatever the fuck his name is. I don't know. Probably gonna change it in 2 weeks after I release this anyway, so who gives a fuck? Or maybe he'll get canceled again. Anyways, it starts off decent, right, with the really shitty god-awful beat produced by some young Swiss guy. I don't know, the beat kind of fucking sucks. But the guy on the hook, Delta D's, like, absolutely saves it entirely. Like, you could literally put that man on just a fart beat and it would sound sick. And I really do enjoy the hook, although we must talk about the first of many questionable lines on this project, as if I look at my notes here, you got a hole like no one else. I have heard a lot of unsexy lyrics in my time, that has to take the cake as the unsexiest lyric I've ever heard. Like, imagine you're a woman and a dude is like trying to win you over, and he's like, no, like, please don't go, please don't leave me. I love your hole. It's like no one else's. Bro, run. What the fuck? It's really bad. And the rest of the hook is good, though. It's just that line really stands out to me as like, what? As for the first verse, I think it's a good verse. It's a solid verse. However, it does fall very flat in comparison to the hook, whereas the hook is like really well mixed and there's a lot of layers and a bunch of moving parts, and then the verse comes in and it's like maybe like a 12 decibel drop off, and there's not really anything going on in it other than just like a shit ton of reverb. So, you know, I think it would be fine if it was just like an Anskee track. Like, it would sit well. It's just a solid Anskee verse, but in comparison to the hook from Delta D's, it's just not on par. And again, like I said when it first dropped, this doesn't really feel like an Anskee track. It feels like a Delta D's track featuring two artists, because the hook really carries the whole thing, and because Anskee's only there for that one verse as well. So it's like, you know, I mean, I know it's hard to fit in two features and have one of them be the hook, but maybe if there was like bridge section, I don't know, could have benefited from that. As for our third artist, yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I'm sorry. He tries to match the melodics that Delta D's did, and that's fine. I think the melody's cool and the writing is fine, but you gotta process your vocals. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. You need to process your vocals. You can't just hop in the booth, sing 40 layers over a verse, and then bounce that out doing nothing to it other than like maybe a low cut or something. Like, if you don't have the money to get autotune or Melodyne or whatever, there's free ones out there. FL Studio has a pitcher in it. I don't know how good that is or if it really does much. But there's also M Auto Pitch from Melter Productions. Just like slap that on, do something, because if you, especially if you're doing layered vocals, they're all gonna be out of key with each other. Especially if the main vocal itself is already out of key. I got the bounce stem. I got the main vocal stem. I ran it through Melodyne. It's out of key, and I know that because I made the beat. So it's out of key. The layers are out of key with the already out of key main vocal, so it's just a stacking of just out of keyness and disjointedness, and it's not very pleasant on the ears because it doesn't sound good. Like, just to put it simply. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being bad at singing or singing out of key. I do it all the fucking time. That's why I just slap autotune on, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah. Or I'll just slap on Melodyne and be like, drag, 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 and make it sound as natural as possible. Also, just like being in the right scale. You know, you can get away with it if you're like Anskee and you just like spit, because you're not trying to hit specific notes. But if you're trying to hit specific notes, you need to make sure you are hitting those specific notes. I mean, even the greatest artists in the world use like a bit of pitch correction with their producers. Like, you'll never hear a Bruno Mars song with a raw vocal, you know? Just saying. Now we get into what I think is easily the strongest track on the project, which is Cold. From the beat to the execution on the hook, everything is executed so well given Anskee's standard, but also just in general, like, I think it stands out as just its own good track. I really enjoyed the bit in the second verse where he's going like, beg and choke and rip my throat. Like, I think the delivery of that just really sits well with you and it resonates with me, and it's like, oh my god, like there's something powerful, there's something deep here, and it's good to see that. It's really good to see that. Oh, my notes say the first verse. It was in the first verse. Oops. I also really enjoy the hook. I think the hook is good. There's a good flow to it. You can remember it. It's like a little earworm. It's a little, it's just chilling in there. So yeah, good work. Moving on to Shooting Star. This is the first track out of 2, which features the dog shit artist known as Young Swiss. He really sucks, and I think he should die. And things really do start off strong with this one. I really enjoy the guitar beat from the 2 producers on it. I really enjoy just the sad melodic energy. It resonates, and that does get executed quite decently in the hook with the underlying informant shift, which is fucking sick. And on the contrary, this is the track where you can most notice that Anskee's mixing isn't really where he wants it to be or where he thinks it is. Because when you hear the shift from the hook into the verse, it's just dry. It's like homie is like in a wall and he's just like going to the wall like, yeah, I love this, but I hate this. And even right now, like, there's natural reverb in the room. Like, homie is like smack flush against the wall with like no echo coming off whatsoever. There's no reverb. There's no like chorus. There's no phaser, flanger, or like just any spice whatsoever. It just leaves me longing for more. And also, I think having him come in for the first time could have been done better. Like, whether that to be like take out that first melodic bit or maybe just like tone it down a bit, maybe like throw on like automation on like a high cut and then like slowly bring it in to have it like phase itself in. And it really does just feel like a homie opened FL, comped his verses, threw on a low cut and called it a day, And also, if you don't want to go for the automation, another thing that could have worked is just doing like maybe like a background like reverby bit for the melodic section, or and especially like tune it a bit too, like because it's like you're going for like a harmonic thing for a second, so just like make sure you're in key. But like having it be like a background reverby bit could disguise that out of keyness, excuse me. And I think that could have worked well, rather than just having it be like dry up front while the beat is breaking down and then it drops again, where it feels like the drop is less important. And speaking of punch, Anskee delivers the punch on the drop in the second verse. However, there's a specific section that falls very flat in my opinion. The delivery on Crybaby was no. And the soul hole pole rhyme scheme felt really, really forced. Like, what rhymes with soul? Hole. And, fuck it, throw something about a pole, too. Like, like, that immediately stood out to me as, like, oh, okay, like, homie is just on Rhyme Zone and typed in soul and was like, okay, these words sound cool, let's just, fuck it, let's do it. And we then get into Blood on My Face, which is fucking dark. And it creates an interesting contrast as like the beat is sort of uplifting sounding with the vocal chops and sort of like the energy and the upbeatness from it, but then you really hear the raw, pure emotion in the vocal delivery and also just the lyrics themselves, like having to go through that shit at such like a young stage of your life, and then just like memorizing the taste of blood on your face. It's like, oh, it's fucking brutal, cunt. I think the verses and the hook bounce off each other really well, and it creates a really proper dynamic, cohesive track that's just solid all around. Not really much more to say about it. And then we get to Riot, and this is the return of Young Swiss in what is the stronger of the two tracks, but more because of Anskee rather than Young Swiss. I think the Shooting Star hook is better than the Riot hook, but the Riot verses are better than the Shooting Star verses. It really feels like Anskee cared more about this track. Like, this is where I think his mixing is the strongest, with the reverb on the "I might cause a riot, right? And also just everything else, like with the ad libs in the first verse, like, ever see the happiest person you know? No, tie themselves with a rope, sip and lean in order to cope, something and a rope, rest in peace. It's like, yeah, it's like I really enjoy the vocal processing and delivery and everything on this track. Although I do think the Riot bit could have benefited from some panning, like bouncing back and forth, which he did do at the end when it was in the background of the last hook. And also, it would have been very beneficial if Homeboy didn't turn into a pterodactyl at the end. I rest my case. The interlude section, when the strings come in, and then the feature just smashing through the mix, cutting off Anskee, was delivered really well. But it's interesting that it almost feels like there's two hooks on the track, right? Because it's called Riot, and then Anskee does the Riot bit, but then there's the hook, which is the Young Swiss part. So, I don't know. It's an interesting choice nonetheless. Then we get to Kurapika, which features Dead Boy Kez, who we have previously seen on Homie Shit, the biggest single from Anskee thus far. And this track is interesting. I think Anskee could have benefited from being another 2 to 3 inches away from the mic and using a pop filter or a de-esser, as the P-pops are very prominent. Like, you can just hear all of it, and it just really takes you away from the actual track, because all you can think about is those P-pops. There's also like a slight accent in his delivery, which I thought was an interesting choice. I don't know if that was like intentional or if that was supposed to like be something in relation to the track. I don't know. I don't even know what a Kurapika is. Is it like, I don't know. As for the feature, we already know Dead Boy Kez brings the heat given his performance on Homie Shit, and his verse is fucking insane. Like, it's almost like the beat is being drowned out by him, though, rather than the beat and Kez working together. It feels like the beat is here and then Kez is like up here. Like, I think a different beat could have worked a lot better for this track. And this is why it's kind of like an issue of just like finding beats on YouTube rather than just having a producer. Because if you have a producer that you work with, you can like bounce the vocals to them, and then the producer can like look at that and be like, "Ooh, okay, I can change this in the beat now. I can add this. I can do this to this element." Whereas if you have a YouTube beat, it's locked like that. You just have the WAV file, so you can't really do much to it. And I'm not saying like it's a bad thing that Kez delivered his verse the way he did. I just think it could have been more beneficial if the beat was a lot more powerful when he comes in, because he's literally just fucking screaming his ass off, and then there's just like, oh hey, there's like a beat in there. That's crazy. But yeah, this is definitely something you want to blast really loud when you're going 60 in a school zone. Insane vibe. Not Anskee's part though. Sorry, Anskee. Madara OG is easily the catchiest track on the entire project. The Madara is back, talk is talk, talk is talk, like that melody is just infectious, and all that on top of the beat that was used, the boom bap, is fucking crazy. It creates a masterpiece, honestly. But again, the syllables are quite prominent in the mix. Would love for that to get worked out on the next project. There's free de-essers out there. I know Ableton has the multi-band dynamics, where you just like drag it down and then bring it over. But there's also other de-esser third-party plugins you can install. I don't know if I'm sure FL has some sort of similar thing. I know you can use a compressor to de-ess, but just work that out. And I enjoyed the breakdown as well. And overall, easily a top 5 track on the album, possibly 2. I would probably make it number 2 behind Cold. Then we get to the Rap Vamp freestyle, which, just like previous freestyle releases we've seen from Anskee, the intro is fucking cringe. I mean, yeah, mutta type beat. Not like the dude though. Shout out Mutta though. Like what? What? It like gives me the same energy as the other freestyle he did, where it's like, oh yo, isn't this supposed to be like a producer tag or something? Then the producer comes in and he's like, oh shit, there it is. Oh, I'm supposed to rap now or something, right? Okay. Here we go. Like, what? Anyways, back into the actual track. Once the verse starts, it actually gets a lot better. It's probably one of the more forgettable tracks on the album, though. It could just be from me not playing it a lot because the intro is cringe, and I just see like rap Vamp freestyle. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really want to listen to a freestyle right now. But like, I do not give this track any thought, and I can't think of a single lyric off the top of my head other than like, it's the rap Vamp. So take with that as you will. Pokerider is our other single here, and I previously uploaded a reaction to this track when it dropped, and I wish I had been more harsh on it. In retrospect, maybe it's because I was more positive on it in relation to Show Up, because my expectations were low, and then Pokerider was better than Show Up, so I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good sign. But at the same time, these were things I noticed instantly, like, the flow is very boring and bland. It doesn't change at all. It's just over and over again. That was my depiction of a flow moving in a straight line and not changing at all. Thank you. Just like previously in Show Up, some of these lyrics are suspect, to say the least. For example, every track I mega evolve, yeah, into an asshole. Or how about this one? Might get his girl to ride on. That's how I sun my rivals. Silver got a hard on? And just to drive the point home, I'm gonna jump off like a playa like my name Mario. I made some kids mad, should I say sorry-o? Yes. Yes. Apologize for letting that lyric leave the studio. I rest my case. Now, into the outro. Autograph. This is typically where you want to put one of your heavy hitters, which yeah, it's not one of the worst tracks on the album, but I also wouldn't put it exactly at the top. So I guess, fair enough on that. It's like in the middle ground. It's not exactly a strong closer, but it works. I do like the theme of it, having it be like showing that people are fake as fuck and they only care about you once you've made it. It's like, oh, he used to beat my ass, now he's asking for an autograph. Used to some, now he's asking for an autograph. Motherfuckers used to hate me, now they're asking for an autograph. It's like, yeah. Good job. So overall, I'm feeling a light to decent 4 on this one. What do you think? Have you streamed Pessimist by Anskee? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Transition. I was supposed to do that before. Shit. Bye.